Escaping Karen, flat tire. As I drove away from the grocery store, I breathed a sigh of relief. I had narrowly escaped a Karen, the likes of which I had never encountered before. But as I made my way down the deserted back road, a sense of unease crept over me. The trees loomed over the road, casting twisted shadows across the pavement. The wind howled through the branches, whispering secrets that I could not comprehend. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that I was completely alone. Suddenly, I heard a loud thud, and my car began to shake. I struggled to maintain control as I realized that I had a flat tire. I quickly pulled over to the side of the road, my heart pounding in my chest. As I stepped out of the car, I was struck by a sense of dread. The darkness seemed to close in around me, suffocating me with its malevolent presence. I knew that I was not alone. Out of the shadows emerged a figure, hunched and twisted, with eyes that glinted in the darkness. It was a Karen, more fearsome and terrible than any I had ever encountered before. She cackled, her voice grating on my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. I tried to run, but my legs refused to move. The Karen crept closer, her twisted form blocking out the moonlight. She raised a gnarled hand, reaching for me with fingers like talons. In that moment, I knew that I was doomed. But then, something within me snapped. I refused to be a victim. I grabbed my shoe and swung with all my might, scaring the Karen away. The Karen let out a shriek of anger, stumbling backwards. I used the distraction to drive about another 300 feet away, leaving the Karen far behind. As I drove, my heart racing, I knew that I had only a matter of time before that Karen and maybe all her friends would hunt me down. As I gazed upon my flat tire, I knew that I had a mission to complete. My trusty steed, my car, had been injured and it was up to me to save the day. I could feel the weight of responsibility on my shoulders, but I knew that I had to act quickly. I assessed the tools that were in my trunk. A spare tire, a jack, a tire iron and a pair of gloves I kept in the trunk for emergencies and some lubricant. With a determined look in my eyes, I reached for my trusty tire iron, the weapon that would allow me to vanquish this foe. With my tire iron in hand, I loosened the lug nuts on the flat tire, making sure to turn them counterclockwise. As I worked to remove the lug nuts from the flat tire, I noticed that one of them was particularly stubborn. It refused to budge, no matter how hard I tried to turn it with my tire iron. In situations like these, it's important not to panic. Instead, I took a deep breath and assessed the situation. There are a few tricks that can be used to help loosen a stubborn lug nut. First, I sprayed a small amount of penetrating oil onto the lug nut. This oil can help to loosen rust or debris that may be causing the nut to stick. I let the oil soak in for a few minutes before trying again to turn the lug nut. Next, I used a breaker bar, or you can use a longer-handled tire iron to gain extra leverage. This can help to apply more force and make it easier to loosen the nut. I placed the breaker bar on the end of the tire iron and slowly pushed down, using my body weight to help turn the nut. If all else fails, it may be necessary to seek the help of a professional. A mechanic can use specialized tools to remove stubborn lug nuts without causing damage to the wheel or brake components. I used all of my strength to break the resistance of the stubborn nut, and with a satisfying click, it finally gave way. In the end, I was able to successfully remove the stubborn lug nut using a combination of penetrating oil and extra leverage. Next, I used my car jack to lift the car off the ground, positioning it underneath the vehicle's designated lift point. I placed the car's jack on the metal frame of the body close to the tire and slowly cranked the jack, feeling the car rise up until the flat tire was completely off the ground. I could hear the ticking of the clock as I worked tirelessly to remove the damaged tire. It was a struggle, but I refused to give up. I removed the loosened lug nuts one by one, being sure to keep them in a safe place where they wouldn't roll away. Then, I gently pulled the flat tire off the wheel hub, being careful not to damage the wheel or brake components. I quickly set to work installing the spare. It was a race against time, but I would not be defeated. I knew that failure was not an option. I quickly grabbed the spare tire and lined it up with the wheel hub, carefully fitting it into place. As I tightened the bolts carefully, I felt a surge of power course through me. This was my moment, my time to shine. I lowered the car back down to the ground, just enough to keep the tires from spinning. I then used my tire iron to fully tighten the lug nuts, tightening them in a star pattern to ensure even distribution of pressure. I tightened the lug nuts as best as I could. I could see a group of Karens now coming in my direction. But I was no longer fearful. I lowered the car all the way down, making sure to remove the jack safely. With the new tire in place and properly secured, I stood back for a quick moment to admire my work, knowing that I had successfully completed my mission. As I climbed back into my car, I could feel the weight of my victory lifting from my shoulders. I had done it. I had changed a tire like a hero. And as I drove away, I knew that I would always be ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that I had the power to conquer any obstacle that stood in my way. Eat my dust, Karens.